Wow, it really just goes live right away. Let me wipe off the lens. Okay, can you guys see me okay? I didn't have much time to prepare, so let me introduce myself. My channel says Edward Rooster. You can call me Edward, I don't care. My name's Shannon. So I wanted to do my first video about The Shining, and I only picked The Shining because I had read the book. My husband had the book. He has all these Stephen King books, and we had the movies. I'd seen the movies years and years ago. I'm going to adjust the camera a little bit. I'm just realizing there's a big glare behind me, but if anything, maybe I look heavenly. So I read the book after my husband had recommended I do so, telling me how different the book is from the movie. Before we get into the details of it today, what I wanted to do is first, I started looking into what Stephen King had intended to do with the book and how it turned into the movie. I think a lot of people know that when Kubrick remade The Shining, not remade, I'm sorry, made The Shining as the movie, Stephen King wasn't really happy with it. And in order to do the series, I believe he hired Mick Garris, the guy who filmed The Stand, the filmmaker that made The Stand. Before he was actually able to make the miniseries, or it was just a 3-part series, Stephen King actually had to agree because Kubrick had rights, and MGM and Kubrick had rights to The Shining. Stephen King had to agree that he would no longer bash on the 1980 film version that Kubrick made. And I think the other one was that whatever series or filmmaking they made of The Shining thereafter would no longer be able to be released on home video. So if somebody finds out differently, please leave a comment. Let me know what the fact is. But out of the limited reading that I was able to do, that's what I was able to glean. Now, we all know that in the original Shining movie, Jack Nicholson portrayed Jack Torrance. Now, he did a phenomenal job. From what I read, the irony is that is not exactly the kind of Jack Torrance that Stephen King was trying to portray. But the fan base loved it. Who doesn't love Jack Nicholson, right? The guy is just crazy good actor. But Steven Weber ended up casting as Jack Torrance in the series. And that was more along the lines of what Stephen King was trying to portray as Jack Torrance, from what I read. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I read a little bit into it as to what Stephen King was trying to do. Other details you're going to notice is that in the movie, of course, Wendy Torrance is, dark haired, kind of goofy. And in my opinion, from reading the book to seeing the movie, I didn't feel like Jack was portrayed as the personality that I read in the book. In the movie, he and Wendy have a very strained relationship from the beginning of the movie. When you read the book, there is actually a lot of elaboration on how much they loved each other. They go into the storytelling of how Wendy and Jack went back years together, and she had kind of an abusive mother who was just overall a bitch, and how Jack kind of pulled her away from that kind of abusive relationship and essentially freed her and loved her and took care of her. And throughout the book, you start reading about like parts where they're interacting and they're flirting with each other, and he's putting his hand around her waist. There's a lot more affection. And so you really start to feel when Jack changes later on that Wendy is emotionally hurt. She loves this guy and he loves her too. And the same with the relationship with their child, Danny. In the movie, Danny Lloyd plays Danny, the kid with the shining, and he does a really good job of it. In the book, he's pretty much the same. He and Wendy's characters weren't too far off. However, I'm going to try to screen share this. The reason I wanted to do kind of a test on this, and I'm realizing that I should have used StreamYard. That's why I'm not prepared. I just went go live. So we'll just talk at this. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to share a link with you guys. I read The Shining online. We do have the hard copy, but because I'm reading this on my breaks at work or moving around, I can't really carry a book everywhere with me. I got it off of a website called freenovelread.com. Free novel read. And like I said, I'll put a link in the description so you can click on it. You go to the search bar up at the top, type in The Shining, and it's pretty easy to read. You can zoom in on the letters and make it bigger. So I'm going to click away from the camera. So I'm still going to talk to you, but there is one part, and I will add links to where I'm reading this and where I'm watching this. I found a YouTube channel that has pretty much The Shining movie pieced into 2 and 4 minute increments. And the first two is pretty much when they're driving up the mountain to the Outlook Hotel. And then Jack Torrance sitting in an interview with the manager, Ullman. Now, in the movie, Jack Torrance and Ullman seem to get along just fine. They're talking, they're smiling, and Jack Nicholson just has that infamous grin, that Joker grin. What the book elaborates more on is that he didn't like Ullman. He didn't like him one bit, and Ullman didn't like him. The interview process in the book was actually very tense and uncomfortable for both of them. It sounds to me like Ullman was kind of uppity and condescending to Jack, and Jack kind of thought of him as this little prick, and just because he was condescending. Now let's back up into the details. If you remember, Jack is supposedly an alcoholic. And in the book, it explains extensively how much of that alcoholism nearly lost his marriage because of the infamous incident where he talks about grabbing Danny because he got mad and he was drunk and he breaks Danny's arm. In the book, that's all they elaborate. That's all they elaborate in the movie. But in the book, they elaborate a lot more as to why Jack is at the Outlook. Hydrate. So in the book, they talk about the part where Jack Torrance is at the interview up at the Outlook with Ullman, and then he pretty much finishes the conversation, and then you go back to the scene where Wendy and Danny are waiting for him. The difference is in the movie, Danny is inside the bathroom by himself, brushing his teeth or doing something, and he's talking to Tony in the mirror. And that's when Tony says he already got the job. In fact, he's going to call Wendy in a moment and tell her the news, right? In the book, Danny's waiting outside on the curb, waiting for Jack Torrance to come back from the interview to tell them the good news. And Wendy's looking out the window, reminiscing about all the awful things that have happened and how happy she is because Jack's been sober for this many months. And she gets emotional about it. In the book, she is blonde, which, by the way, is portrayed a little more correctly in the miniseries, as she is played by Rebecca De Mornay. So in the book, it also talked about her reminiscing about more things besides the broken arm incident. In the book, Wendy starts thinking about, she goes out and talks to Danny, and Danny says something about his job, Daddy's job, and then he says something about the kid that popped the tires. So what happens in the book is that Jack Torrance decides to go sober. He decides to go clean. And there was some incident where he and his buddy, who was also a school administrator, both drank together a lot. They went out, they hit something in the road, and when they looked back, all they saw was a bicycle. So to their horror, they wonder if they hit and killed a kid. But it doesn't really elaborate, I want to say. So moving on, Jack Torrance is sober for a certain amount of time. And he is kind of like an overseer of the debate club at the school. There is a kid whose daddy is somebody, and daddy wants his son to be a big wig lawyer like himself. puts him in the debate club, and the kid is average. I mean, even Jack Torrance in the book says the kid was okay. The problem was when the kid got stressed or hung up on something, he would start to stutter. And so, because of this stutter, Jack had to cut him from the debate club, and it outraged the kid. It didn't detail much on what the father said, but Jack kind of, I guess, like tried to actually help the kid by keeping him on longer than he thought. The other thing is the kid got angry at Jack Torrance because he said, "You cut my time." And it doesn't elaborate in the book that whether Jack really did or didn't. It says, Jack quotes that he denied it. But later on, the kid decides to get revenge. And as Jack is going out to his car for something, he catches the kid slashing his tires on his Volkswagen Bug. And he gets so angry because it wasn't just the alcoholism that Jack was struggling with in the book. It was also his temper. I guess he had a really bad temper. So this temper kicks in. He's fully sober. He'd been sober for a while. He thinks he's doing great. He loses his mind because he gets angry at this kid for slashing his tires, and he actually doesn't remember, but the last thing he remembers is two other kids pulling him off of this kid, and he had just pummeled his face. So for a teacher to strike a student and all this stuff, obviously he's put on like a suspension. Now, his drinking buddy from the high school is a good friend of his named Al, right? Al in the movie, I think, is mentioned as the guy who helped him get the interview at the Outlook. So apparently in the book, it extensively explains Al's role as Jack Torrance's friend. Al also is on the board of directors to the Outlook Hotel. And as a favor to his drinking buddy, Jack, they had both been clean for the same amount of time, he decides to get Jack a winter job, just a seasonal job away from the school for a while. And he becomes the caretaker. Now, Al promises him that by the time he gets back, he's going to see if maybe he can reinstate Jack at a certain level. It's going to be sensitive. I'm going to help you out, right? Good buddies. So Jack Torrance shows up at the hotel, and now we are back at the interview with Ullman. So the movie is lining up again with the book, where all that information about Al and the teenagers slashing tires is not even in the movie. Now, I have to confess, I didn't watch the series, so I don't know what they elaborate on, but from what I read, it does sound like Garris does cover the correct details of the book. How much of it, I'm not sure. I'm going to try to read it sometime or watch it sometime and find out. My husband and I looked on YouTube, everything, it's not out there online. So we have to order the disc series from Amazon. And when it gets here, as soon as we get done moving in to where we are, we'll hook up the DVD player and we'll watch it. Promise. Maybe I'll do another little excerpt for this. So, not to keep you guys too long, let me wrap up about the interview part. In the movie, you'll see that the interview between Ullman and Jack Torrance is very friendly. They're joking, and Ullman actually even seems a little embarrassed to have to tell Jack about Grady. He even says in the movie, he's like, that we didn't want to scare you off or something like that. And Jack Torrance is like, I could see why they waited to have you tell me this when I'm here. So it's all chummy and it's all very interviewee. And you'll notice a couple parts in that interview, and I wish I had used StreamYard for this because I was prepared to show you a silent clip from the movie of Jack's PR grin, is what they described it as in the book. There's a couple parts in the book where Jack gets so annoyed by Ullman, he does his PR grin, which is public relations. And by that, I'm picturing this like cheesy, like, like I can't stand this guy. Just grin it and take it because this guy is your ticket to the job that your friend got you. So in the book, Ullman is actually a real dick to Jack Torrance. He flat out says, I don't mean to be rude, but I know why you're here about the incident at the high school with the kid that you and you're drinking and I just want to make you aware that I know. It's like he's rubbing it in and Jack Torrance actually gets kind of like okay, I got to take this in the butt, and he does. And it's, you see several times during the book in several different paragraphs where he says he flashes that PR grin, and then in parentheses it actually shows what Jack Torrance is thinking, and he's thinking vulgar thoughts about the guy. So there's a difference there. And there's also a little more elaboration on the Outlook's history and how Ullman gives the impression that he's very proud of this hotel, that it's better than Jack, that Ullman's better than Jack, almost like Jack doesn't deserve to be there. And Jack is just like, buddy, I'm here. My friend got me the job, whatever. And he kind of pieces through it, which becomes an important factor later on, because Jack tries to get back at Ullman and actually creates more problems for himself later. But we'll wait until we get to that chapter. But as far as the interview, there was also a part in the book after he talks to Ullman where he is passed off to the maintenance guy of the Outlook Hotel named Watson. And Watson actually has a huge part in the book where he talks a lot. In fact, he actually comes to an agreement, and it says in the book that Jack Torrance likes Watson a lot because they both share a common dislike for Ullman. So if you read the book, you'll see that Watson is one of these truck driver talking kind of guys, and he says vulgar things, but he's joking, but at the same time, they get along. And Watson's a lot more forgiving than Ullman. And kind of that's when Watson shows Jack a key piece to the book and the demise of the hotel, because he takes Jack down into the basement and gives him a very elaborate explanation about how important it is to make sure you release the pressure of the boilers twice a day or 3 times a day. It says in the book, the boilers are very old and outdated, but they have to keep them running throughout the winter because they don't want these things in pipes to freeze. And so that is the primary importance of the caretaker's role there at the Outlook Hotel according to the book. Now, in the movie, they don't really say so much about the boilers and the pressure. They point out that there's boilers down there. They look at it and they walk away. And in the movie, Ullman walks them to the lobby, briefly introduces Watson, and Watson happens to be this character that's just standing in the background, and that's all you see. He doesn't even hardly say a word except hello. So there's a big difference, because Watson is a kind of a prominent character in the book because he points out what ends up becoming the demise of the Outlook. Now, I will give you guys a spoiler alert. It doesn't end the same way as the movie does in the book. The hotel gets destroyed in the book. In the movie, Jack just freezes to death out in the maze. Now, one last bit of information, and then I'm going to come to a close because I don't like long, extensive videos. In the book, the visual description of the Outlook is very similar. You have this grand hotel in the mountains, but the outside, I know that in the movie, a very prominent characteristic is the maze. Everybody knows the maze of The Shining, right? But in the book, there is no maze. There are topiaries. Topiaries? I might not pronounce it right. I'm so sorry. But there's a lion, a bush, in the shape of a lion, a dog, a rabbit. Actually, there's 2 lions, a dog, and a rabbit that are described. They're kind of creepy to Danny and Wendy, but they don't really think anything of it. But you don't see anything like that in the movie. It's just the maze. Also, in front of the Outlook Hotel, and according to the book, there is a playground. for kids, and it's like a resort thing. It's just it's described differently outside. There's a main shed where there is a snowmobile in the book. They don't really say anything about that until later on in the movie, when Jack Torrance goes out and tears I guess transmission or something out of it's a snowcat, but in the book it's snowmobiles, not the ones that are closed in. So it becomes a factor later on when they're trying to escape, because you could still potentially freeze on a snowmobile because you're not protected. So that's most of the differences I saw in the clips. I will post a link to the 2 clips that I'm referring to. The first clip from YouTube of the Shining movie doesn't really do much. It's just the introduction of him driving up the mountain. But the second clip during the interview, watch it. You'll see, remind yourself of what it was like. They're real chummy. They're smiling. They're laughing. It was not like that in the book. But I'll also post a link to the online book that I read, and read the first 2 pages. That's pretty much where I compared, the information. It's hard to cross-reference because it seems like there's a lot more information about the interview in the book than there is in the movie. So while there's only 1 clip that really refers to it in the movie, there's going to be about 2 or 3 pages out of the book that you need to read to catch up on all of what everybody's thinking. There's a lot more details that people will notice. I didn't want to pinpoint every single detail because it's a long book. Shulamite's here. I love you, sister. And I'm almost done, but I am going to moderate you for sure, because I always love having a moderator that I trust. So thanks for being here. And I'm going to close by saying I'll put the links to what I'm talking about below. And I don't promise that I'm going to continue to the next chapter of The Shining next time. I might have a different book and movie. I might have a music video or something that I've seen that it's just kind of interesting to talk about history of it or the meaning of things. There's all kinds of meanings that people interpreted about The Shining, by the way. That is going to be like a 1-hour video. But for now, I'm going to close on that, and I'm going to next time do this the right way, and I'll do the video on StreamYard so I can show you the actual web pages and the video clips that I'm talking about. It'll be a little more exciting than just staring at my face with the glare of the window in the background. But, hopefully you guys have something to add about this. If you do, please leave me a comment and tell me. And if you have ideas on something that you noticed that I might have missed, leave a comment. Tell me. I'm always open for constructive criticism. So love you, Teresa. I hope you guys are having a good day. And anybody else watching, thanks for joining me for now. And we'll do it again soon. Thanks.